This is Dolynny TV, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and welcome back to another edition of Edmonton Oilers discussion here on the channel today. Obviously, you saw me, if you follow the community tab here on Dolynny TV, share out the video from earlier this season where we were talking about the cap, the salary cap issues, potentially only going up $1 million, how that screws the Oilers, and kind of the problems that stem from that. That leads me into today's discussion, which I actually saw pop up. I don't know if it was on Twitter today or on yesterday, where there's a couple of Leafs fans out there speaking into the universe that they want the Leafs to go out there and offer sheet Ryan McLeod. And this is, of course, a danger that we kind of talked about with Evan Bouchard in a previous video when we were discussing his contract. So we'll discuss that much and more here in a matter of moments. But friends, if you're new to the channel right now, let me cue this up. I need you to hit that subscribe button, all right? I want you aboard for all the off-season coverage. Unfortunately, I can't promise you a draft to remember. I can't even really promise you a free agency to remember. We're not sure what this Oilers team is going to be capable of, or even what this Oilers team is going to do in free agency and the draft this year. So that all remains to be seen. We know we got a couple key pieces to sign. We know we got a couple of things to get done. So we'll try and at least cover that off and then get excited for next fall when the Oilers get back to action. So before we get too far into this, let's go pull up quickly Ryan McLeod and what we need to know on what has been a productive upswing year for the youngster. Obviously dealing with injuries at the end, dealing with injuries throughout, I guess you could say. And now for the Oilers, you got to see what he brings in that next season. So let's go quickly to Cap Friendly, where it shows the Oilers currently have $5.79 million in cap space to sign a whole bunch of guys. Unfortunately, that's a mess. Right now, you know, you've got Klim Kostin, Ryan McLeod, Nick Bjugstad, Matthias Janmark, Derek Ryan, and Devin Shore, with that grand total of almost $6 million in cap space. We do expect a $1 million increase. That gives you 7. Now all of a sudden 2, you go up to 2 or 3, and that's where you get that magical $9 million cap space number that I've talked about over the past several weeks. But we need to go over to Ryan McLeod and figure out what he did, what he was looking for this season. He will turn 24 on September 21st in the middle of the preseason. He took that team-friendly deal, pardon me, this past offseason, which allowed the Oilers to operate down to a T to get Matthias Ekholm at the end of the year. $798,000, obviously Ryan McLeod due up for a little bit more of a deal than that. Coming in the past several years, year 1 in 21, he had only 1 point in 10 games. Followed that up last year with 21 points in 71 games. But you look at 23 points in 57 games this past season. And of course, 5 assists in 12 playoff games as well. More productive than the previous offseason. You kind of map out that it's been a very good year for Mr. Ryan McLeod, who would have, had he played a full year, put up just about 33, 34 points is what that averages out to. So when it comes down to it right now for the Edmonton Oilers and trying to figure out, okay, do you sign Ryan McLeod? Obviously you do. What does that number come in at? Obviously we've talked about Evan Bouchard being the dictation number for how the rest of the offseason goes. But if you're going to drag your feet, if you're going to wait too long, I don't see why these Leafs fans that suggest maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs should offer sheet Ryan McLeod, why they wouldn't have a case to actually argue there, right? It's not me poking fun at Leafs fans being silly. It's an actual, like, hey, I didn't think of that, but that should be an actual concern for Ken Holland and the Edmonton Oilers, just knowing that you've kind of got 2 RFAs, 3 if you include Klim Kostin, that are very, very important to making next season work, right? You think about Klim Kostin's role on the Oilers this past year. I don't think the Oilers are half the team they were if Klim Kostin doesn't come through and have a couple of the key moments he did, obviously in the playoffs too. Ryan McLeod, a very steady Eddie, great third line forward to have. And then obviously Evan Bouchard too, a great guy on your top power play and second pair alongside Matthias Ekholm. So when you're rolling all these numbers out and you're trying to figure it out, Ryan McLeod's guy probably should come in same kind of headspace as Evan Bouchard, but on a longer term deal, probably a 5-6 year deal at that 3 to 4 range, if that's what kind of deal you're going to give him. But for Ryan McLeod too, he's taken on some penalty killing responsibilities, stuff like that. He's a guy that's very important to this team, and it all depends. Do you bridge him and hope that he kind of peaks at 40 points and then away you go? Or do you kind of extend him long term and hope that that 40 points keeps going for as long as it possibly can throughout his career? Because Ryan McLeod's still a second-round draft pick, a guy who should be very productive, very usable within your team for years to come. And obviously at 24, you sign him until he's 29. You got to give him money to buy UFA years. And 2, you're signing him again when he's 29, 30, as opposed to 26, 27. So that's where for the Oilers right now, I guess how much of this comes down to that yellow banana shtick of Mr. Ken Holland, because how much of it is I just need to make sure we can run it back next year versus I don't need to worry about Steve Staios or Brad Holland's job in 4 years from now. That's not his concern going into next offseason. His concern going into next offseason is putting his feet up on a vacuum cleaner and retiring, right? 100%. So for it right now is Ryan McLeod is going to be that question mark that you don't want to leave too long. But I almost wonder, and this is something that I kind of had to play with myself in upstairs after, that sounded terrible. Upstairs, I meant up here. You just had to play with yourself a little bit in terms of the numbers and all that. Oh my God, I said it again. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Scrap this whole video while we're doing it. But you just have to figure out the numbers, and it almost kind of reasons out that maybe you sign Ryan McLeod before you sign Evan Bouchard. Because if Evan Bouchard gets offer sheeted, I think no matter what, you have to sign him to that deal. Whether he accepts or not, that's a whole nother question on the offer sheet that I don't want to talk about it. But Ryan McLeod's a guy that, right, if you don't show loyalty to after he signed for that team-friendly deal to make sure you could do what you could do this year, you might actually run into a problem. Because there could be, like a team like the Arizona Coyotes, I doubt a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs would do it, but a team out there that looks to put Ryan McLeod in a second-line role with some very good support wingers, and gives you a chance to give Ryan McLeod a chance to really develop into a full-time star in the NHL. Whereas the Oilers need to sign him for a third-line role to be sporting scoring depth that scores about 40 points a year, right? You think about on the Pittsburgh Penguins back in the day, it was Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Jordan Staal. Well, you think McDavid, Draisaitl, Ryan McLeod. That's the formation that you're looking to try and win the Stanley Cup with. Your fourth line centerman can probably figure that out somehow, some way. I don't know how important that would be necessarily if Ryan McLeod's going to score 40 points next year and you have some trade deadline cap space, right? That's, again, totally a questionable thing to call. And obviously, too, Yamamoto CC, 100 million one plus combinations you could work out this offseason with. But when it comes down to it, the math says that Ryan McLeod has to be just as much of a priority as Evan Bouchard, but we know that Evan Bouchard's contract is kind of going to dictate how the rest of the offseason goes, but you almost have to maybe act on Ryan McLeod sooner than Evan Bouchard just in fear of that offer sheet. How that all wraps up, I'm not too sure. I know the Oilers pulled a dirty on us there today, tweeting out that Clean is him tweet and then making us all think that, all of us that get Twitter notifications, thinking that he had been signed to a contract and instead it was just, here's his best plays of the year. You guys running that Twitter handle for the Edmonton Oilers. But that's really all I've got for you today. I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, kind of map that out because we really haven't discussed that. And that is something that needs to be talked about. So friends, I'm Tyson, this is Dolynny TV. I am up on, out of here.